Carnival of Lust, written by Mike Duke. Love may fade with time, but a man's lusts burn bright all the days of his life. Joey's big sister Linda dropped him off at the carnival around 8 p.m. "I'll be back to pick you up at 11 o'clock, okay?" she confirmed. "Meet me right here in the Armory parking lot." "Yep, sis," Joey answered. "Will do." "Go find yourself some hot little girl, killer," Linda's best friend Jenny taunted him. "Get your lip lock on." She pursed her lips and blew him a kiss. Joey watched her out of the corner of his eye, trying to play it cool as he got out of the car. "Jenny, what the hell?" Linda chastised her friend. "You're going to give him a complex, for God's sake." Joey shut the door without looking back and walked away, trying to look like a big boy, spine erect, chest held high, moving at a leisurely pace with just the right amount of swagger in his gait. Inside, though, he was dying to find his friend Robbie. He reached in his jeans jacket pocket, making sure for the 10th time he had the stack of tickets his mom had picked up for him earlier in the day, as well as the $20 he'd earned mowing 4 of his neighbors' yards during the week, each afternoon. He was lucky the carnival arrived during early September. The grass was still growing some. There might only be 1 or 2 more times to cut it and earn some cash. The lady working the booth was heavy-set and too old-looking for her age. Sagging jowls matched the Salem cigarette sagging down from between her wrinkled ochre-colored lips. "Cash only, kid," she informed him, looking down her nose. Joey pulled out the tickets, looked at the sign that read 5 tickets to enter, tore off 5 from his roll and handed them to the lady. The lady gave him the stink eye, a suspicious, scrutinizing look. She squinted with one eye, while a painted eyebrow rose high on her forehead above the other. "My mom stopped by and bought them for me earlier today," Joey volunteered, feeling the woman's doubts as to how he obtained the tickets. "How old are you, son?" Joey cocked a real eyebrow and got a little smart. 13, lady, and I ain't your son." The lady recoiled her face in surprise, took a deep drag off her cigarette, held it in for a couple of seconds, then leaned forward and blew it in Joey's face. He coughed and waved his hand in front of his mouth and nose to clear the air. "Little big for your britches there, kid," she said, but took his tickets as she looked him up and down, then stared at his face, assessing him somehow. "You got a girlfriend to go with all that machismo, sport?" Joey was caught off guard by the question, and by her calling him sport. It was déjà vu for sure. He struggled to find an appropriate answer, but couldn't come up with anything in time. "That'd be a big old no now, wouldn't it?" the lady challenged him, blunt as a hammer. Joey looked down at his feet. "That's all right," the lady consoled him, her attitude seeming to soften. 13 is a fine age to find your first real puppy love." Joey looked up at her, his eyes pinched into a death beam glare. "Oh, come on, kid, I'm serious." She held up one hand and placed the other over her heart. "Now, come here. Give me your right hand. I'm going to mark you with my good luck stamp. The one that draws the ladies like flies to honey, or at least draws the right one for you." Joey didn't believe a damn bit of this gypsy bullshit she was spouting, but he held his hand out anyway. The lady took his hand in one of hers, rolled the rubber template across a pad of red ink, then stamped the back of his hand. Joey's flesh quivered suddenly at the lady's touch, and where she'd marked him felt warm and wet at once. The lady whispered something in another language, the cigarette still in her mouth, but Joey was oblivious. She released his hand, and he pulled it back to look down at a red image of a smiling horned devil with a tail and pitchfork imprinted on his skin. It was a female devil, though, and she possessed all the right curves, he noticed. He stared at the figure, and its face seemed to fix him with a sensual leer, almost vulgar. Joey liked it. "All right, boy, skedaddle," she ordered. "And behave inside, you hear?" "Yes, ma'am," Joey said while giving a mock salute. He started to turn and walk inside the carnival, but had to do a double-take over his shoulder. He would have sworn on a stack of Bibles the lady's eyes glowed red for a moment, and her skin looked young and smooth out of the corner of his eye. But when he looked square at her, she looked no different than before. Joey blinked his eyes as he turned forward and made his way inside the carnival. The cotton candy stand waited for him just past the entrance, and Joey made a beeline for it. The line wasn't too long. While he waited his turn, he scanned the people walking by for Robbie's face, but didn't see him. A father with 2 children handed a small cotton candy to each of them, red for the boy and pink for his daughter. After the man moved out of the way, Joey approached the counter and placed his order with the older gentleman who manned the booth. He was dressed in a large white apron that stretched across his rather rounded belly. A black bow tie and a white soda jerk hat with a red pinstripe completed the image. "A large blue one," Joey said, pointing at the menu with one hand while holding out $2 bills to the man as payment. He could never tell whether it was supposed to be some blue raspberry or blueberry, but it was his favorite artificial flavor. Joey watched as the man twirled the paper cone, weaving layer after layer of the sugary webbing into a huge fluffy mass before handing it to him. "Enjoy, kid," the man said with a smile that caused the tips of his gray handlebar mustache to arc upward. His face was a portrait of mindless satisfaction, but Joey paid no attention. Joey walked off toward the rides, eating his cotton candy and looking around for Robbie. It was a Friday night, and the carnival was hopping with teenagers. Pretty girls roamed about in packs, prancing along in tight, faded blue jeans, while young boys ogled, most of them too scared to speak. Some of the jocks had their girlfriends in tow, playing game after game to win a big stuffed bear or something similar, the primary motive being to prove their prowess at throwing balls, shooting hoops, or knocking down ducks and various other animal forms with a BB gun. He looked down at the stamp on his hand. Gypsy bullshit, Joey thought, then gave himself a quick reality check. Don't let it get your hopes up, Joey. Ain't no girls looking at you with lust in their eyes. Joey stopped in front of the strongman game, the one where you swing the mallet and try to ring the bell. A man wearing a tuxedo with tails and a top hat stood there, mic in hand, calling to all the men to step on up and prove how strong they were. "Hit the mark, ring the bell, impress our vixen beauty here," the man declared, then stepped aside to reveal a lady exiting from behind a black curtain. "The lovely Mia Kerensky, all the way from the deep, dark woods of Bulgaria." Joey stared at Mia, forgetting to breathe for several seconds. A black one-piece with red frills and lace drew his eyes in, but it was her long legs, olive complexion, and spiraling jet-black hair, which hung halfway down her back, that trapped his attention and lured him into admiring her for some time. She picked up the handle of the huge mallet, hands on the end, arms straight, hips tilted to invite any man up to the platform. "Is there anyone here who wants to take a swing and try to impress the young lady?" the man inquired. Show us your strength, your physical prowess, and perhaps the lady might want to walk about the carnival arm in arm with you later tonight." The man paused and waited for any takers from the gathering crowd. He didn't have to wait long. A fit, blonde-haired man in his early 20s bounded up the steps to the platform where the challenge awaited. Mia smiled at him and curtsied before passing the mallet handle to him. He was muscular, But Joey noted the man didn't take up a very good stance, and he choked up on the mallet handle instead of getting the full force out of it. He swung the mallet and struck the target. The metal weight slid up the pole, but lost momentum well before it reached the bell, falling back to earth with a dull thump. "I'm sorry, sir," Mr. Top Hat said, "but great Hercules did not shine his gaze upon you this night." He patted the disappointed man on the shoulders as he began his walk of shame down the steps. "Anyone else?" he called out. Joey watched as a couple of more men gave it a shot, unsuccessfully. Then a man raised his hand in the crowd. "Holy hell," Joey thought, as the man ascended the stairs at a plodding pace. "This dude is huge." The man was easily 6'5" and over 300 pounds. He wore jean overalls and was obviously a good old farm boy. His hands were more like bear paws or catcher's mitts. He picked up the hammer and swung it down hard, ringing the bell with ease. My, Mr. Top Hat exclaimed. "We have a winner! A truly incredible specimen of a man!" They allowed him to choose from the giant stuffed animal selection or a t-shirt declaring him to be a true strongman. Joey finished the last of his cotton candy, threw the paper roll away, and walked up the steps to the platform. Well, folks, what do we have here?" Mr. Top Hat called out. "You're a rather young competitor, lad. You really think you can do this?" The man looked at him without revealing his disdain. "Probably not, mister," Joey admitted. "But I'll give it every lick of effort I got in me. Plus, I'll probably have better technique than some of these other guys. I've been chopping wood all summer for my dad." Joey smiled big and proud, then looked at Mia, who grinned big and winked at him as she gave him the mallet handle. "Good luck," she whispered. Joey felt a slight warmth on his hand, but was distracted enough by both Mia and the challenge before him it didn't register. The mallet was quite heavy. Joey took up a more than shoulder-width stance a few feet from his target, holding the mallet by the very end of the handle to get maximum leverage. He raised it above his head, letting the wooden mallet fall back in between his shoulders. Joey inhaled deep and then tightened his whole body, bringing the hammer overhead and down with one explosive movement and dropping his weight at the same time. The impact caused the metal weight to climb and climb, stopping just shy of the bell before falling back to the ground. Although defeated, Joey felt it was a good showing for his age and grinned with pride. Mia smiled big and clapped for him. His hand grew even warmer, and he rubbed it with the other, only to feel a strange heat against his fingers. He looked down and saw that the female devil stamp had a gentle red glow about it. It possessed a leering face and seductive smile. "Pretty hot for a cartoon character," he thought to himself. Then something drew his eyes upward. He could not explain why, nor did his mind really dwell on it long enough to question why. But as he glanced up, he saw Mia staring at him. For a moment, he thought he saw some lecherous grin cross her face. Joey rubbed his eyes, then looked again. She was smiling like any beautiful teenage girl would, who seemed impressed with a potential suitor. Attracted to him, even, perhaps. But Joey wasn't totally sure. He didn't have enough experience with these things. The announcer lamented Joey's lack of success and asked him if he wanted to try again. Joey declined, but decided to go stand nearby for a bit. There, he ogled at Mia further, as well as some of the girls who passed by, all the while idly rubbing his hand and feeling more and more aroused at the parade of beautiful flesh passing before his eyes. They might not look at him with lust, but he was sure going to look at them with it. A lot of it. He knew now what those pretty girls looked like under their clothes, and it was a thing of pure beauty and fantastic splendor. His buddy Robbie's dad had a massive collection of Hustler, Penthouse, and Playboy magazines. Robbie knew where they were stashed and had led Joey to what might as well have been the treasures of the Golden City El Dorado. If someone had offered him a choice between money for comic books and records, or another chance at thumbing through those pages of glorious, copper-skinned beauties with their perky breasts and tan-line-free pelvises leading to luscious thighs, Joey knew what he would choose. Hands down, zero doubts. But better than magazines would be the real thing. His mind wandered to Jenny McCready, his sister's best friend. Ever since the first time his eyes beheld those glorious images inside those magazines, he had wanted to see exactly what Jenny had under those clothes of hers. She came over to his house all the time to hang out with his sister. She liked Daisy Duke shorts and midriff muscle shirts that showed off her firm abs and defined shoulders, along with a crack of her ass. She was a 16-year-old goddess. And just earlier this evening, he got the look he'd been dying for. He heard her say she was going to go change into something else in Linda's room. Linda was making popcorn for the movie they were planning on watching before she had to carry Joey to the carnival. Joey hurried into her room and hid in the wardrobe, leaving the door open just a crack so he could see out. Jenny came in and shut the door, then kicked off her shoes and rolled back onto Linda's bed to pull off her jeans, revealing skimpy pink lace underwear. Joey felt his privates tingle with excitement. Jenny stood back up, reached under her shirt, undid her bra, and pulled it out one of the sleeves. Joey gulped hard and salivated. Jenny began to lift her shirt up, one of her full breasts dropping into view. Joey leaned forward in suspense, causing the door to move open just a fraction of an inch, but enough for Jenny to notice. She pulled her shirt back down and eyed the wardrobe. A mischievous smile spread across her face. She stepped forward, grabbed the door, and threw it wide. "Got you!" she exclaimed, but in a quiet voice. "Trying to get you an eyeful of my goods, huh, Joey?" Joey's mouth dropped open, and he couldn't find words to speak, only stared at Jenny, then glanced down at her pink panties. It was as if they were lined with magnets for his eyes. "What's the matter, Joey? Pussycat got your tongue?" she asked, letting a hand drift down to her pubic bone. Joey stared at the sensuous mound above her pussycat, unable to tear his eyes away. He finally managed to speak. "Are you going to tell Linda and my mom?" His eyes pleaded for mercy, big and full of dread. Jenny let the moment drag out, keeping him in suspense. "I tell you what, Joey, because I think you're cute, I'm going to make a deal with you." "Okay," Joey said, hoping it was a good deal that involved keeping his secret. "I'll show you mine if you show me yours. Chest for chest, nether region for nether region." Jenny gave him a sinfully delicious smile. Joey's jaw fell wide open and put a sign up inviting flies to come on down and buy real estate. "What do you say, champ? You brave enough?" She cocked an eyebrow at him and tilted her hips. She posted her free hand at her waist and snaked her index finger under her panties, tugging the corner down a couple of inches to reveal her hip bone. "No tan lines," Joey's mind cried out. He gulped big, closing his mouth, then dared to speak. Yes, he assured her, then, without waiting, took off his shirt and flexed his pecs. He was thin, but it was all muscle and bone, wiry and strong from all the yard work and odd jobs he did to earn spending money. "Whoa," Jenny said, nodding her head in approval. "I knew you had some muscles. Lean, but still muscular. The girls are going to eat you up in a few years. Joey blushed at the compliment. Now it's your turn, he managed to say without stuttering. Well, sport, I guess it is. Jenny made a slight show of lifting one side of her shirt at a time until each voluptuous breast fell into view. Joey scrutinized every detail, committing it to memory. The way they hung, the line of demarcation where the bulge swelled in all of its glory, the beautiful areolas surrounding her perfectly firm nipples. Jenny lowered the curtain, ending the upper body show. All right, drop those shorts, she commanded and smiled. Joey felt a little self-conscious, but after considering the rewards, quickly unbuttoned his pants, then shoved them and his underwear down to his knees. He stood there, fully erect. Whoa, Jenny said, and gave a mock salute. Attention! You like what you see, I see. She let out a little giggle. And I must say, for your age, you are certainly packing some better-than-average heat. Impressive. Joey didn't pull his pants back up as he informed Jenny. Your turn. Jenny hooked both thumbs in her underwear and, tilting her hips back and forth while pulling down one side at a time, bit by bit, she revealed her pussycat to Joey. You like that, Joey? Jenny teased him. I bet you do, don't you? Before Joey could muster up the courage to ask her if he could touch it, she pulled her underwear back up. Well, I think that's enough for now. Get back in that closet and hide until I leave. I'll keep your sister distracted long enough for you to sneak out of here. And remember, this is our little secret. Jenny put her index finger to his lips, emphasizing the secret part, then palmed his face and pushed him into the wardrobe, shutting the door. Moments later, she had pulled on her Daisy Duke shorts and was headed out. Joey snuck out in a hurry and stayed in his room the whole movie, watching cartoons and trying to recover. Robbie's gonna friggin' flip his lid over this, Joey had thought. Joey's mind returned to the present, just in time to see Robbie approaching him. Robbie was 16 years old, but enjoyed hanging out with Joey. They had similar interests, riding bikes, reading comic books, playing Dungeons and Dragons, and of course, looking at naked women. Joey couldn't contain his excitement. Rushing up to Robbie, he began spilling every detail of his sordid, youthful adventure. You gotta be shitting me, man! No way! Robbie exclaimed when Joey spilled the beans about him and Jenny striking the deal. He ate up every sultry bit, and when Joey relayed his first time seeing a woman's vagina in person, Robbie teased him in jest. Huh, I bet you wanted to touch that pretty thing with your cock something terrible, didn't you? Joey nodded vigorously, then rolled his eyes. Oh, God, yes, he said. Well, buddy, Robbie put his arm around Joey's shoulders and pulled him close. You've just cleared second base on the way to popping your cherry. You'll get there before you know it. Robbie clapped him on the back. Now, Robbie turned to look at Joey. Let's go ride some rides. Hell yeah, Joey answered. How about we hit the octopus first? It's right over there. Joey pointed on the other side of a large inflatable slide, wide enough for 8 people to come down at once and over 2 stories tall. Or, Joey offered, slide first, then the octopus. They hit several rides back to back. First, they cackled while shooting down the slide side by side head first. Next, the octopus was one of Joey's favorite rides. The central core spun round while the cars at the end of each tentacle spun independently, creating brief whips of centrifugal force every few seconds or so. After a minute, the arms extended, shifting their cars into a vertical spin. Joey hollered in delight, pinned to the side of his seat. The arms lowered back down to their original angled position and then began slowing until the ride ended. Joey probably would have skipped the bullet, but Robbie browbeat him into it. A bullet-shaped car attached to each end of two long metal girders rotated around a central axle, swung high, crested at the top, then plummeted down toward the ground before it curved inches away, barely avoiding impact before heading up high again. Every time their car fell toward the earth, Joey wailed like a siren in the night. The zipper kept both Robbie and Joey gripping the lap bar for dear life as the ride spun on its axis, cars moving around it like the tracks on a tank, each car spinning and rocking all about. It was insane, but Joey loved it. As they exited the zipper, Joey noticed a pattern among the rides, in fact around the whole carnival. Apart from Mr. Top Hat and the Cotton Candy Man, all the male workers were quite homely and in fact rather quiet. They sat at rides, taking tickets, eyes cast down, or went about pulling levers, checking safety latches and harnesses on rides, or walking around picking up trash with a simple stick and nail, but never engaging with the customers in the least. It was mostly older women like the lady at the entrance who were speaking to people over the sound system, working the booths and generally interacting with everyone attending the carnival. He and Robbie approached a line of booths with various contests: duck shoot, basketball hoop throws, whack-a-mole, the ring toss, balloon dart throw, and the milk bottle baseball throw. At each booth, a beautiful woman stood, enticing every man and boy passing by to wage battle and win a prize. They all wore the same clothing, a one-piece burlesque-style corset. Black and red vertical stripes were highlighted with red frills and lace along the bust line and groin. An enormous tuft of red feathers, all tipped in black, emerged from the top of their glutes, draped down almost to the back of the knees and wrapped around their hips. Each one also wore a satin red rose tied in their flowing black hair. They were gorgeous beyond measure. The penthouse and hustler women didn't seem to hold a candle to these gypsy ladies. Robbie was drawn like a moth to a flame, hemming and hawing left and right, unable to decide for several seconds which lady was the most beautiful to him. After much deliberation, he locked eyes with the woman manning the balloon dart throw booth and made a beeline toward the counter. "Hi," Robbie said, and felt his tongue go numb. He opened his mouth to speak, but felt mute. He looked down at his feet, not used to feeling self-conscious around the female species, but this girl was utterly out of his league. He finally managed to look up and make his mouth work, at last, almost stuttering but forcing the words past his lips without hesitation. "You're incredibly beautiful. Did you know that?" He paused long enough to dig $1 from his pocket and lay it on the countertop. "I'd like to play your game," he declared. The girl's hand slipped out smooth as butter and retrieved the bill, making it disappear, to where neither Joey or Robbie could follow. Robbie didn't even try. His gaze never left the balloon girl's face, except to stare at her breasts with a level of fascination that only teenage boys can pull off. "Here you go, Robin Hood," the girl said, with a bewitching tone that challenged and aroused at the same time as she slid the 5 darts across the counter to Robbie. "Do you think you can pop them for me?" Her body language was agonizingly seductive. Head turned slightly, eyes narrowing with a sensuous intensity as she began to speak, her tongue pushing unusually far forward with the word think. With the word you, she touched Robbie's hand, her flesh electric in contact with his. After a dramatic pause, her lips curled in before parting with an audible noise of separation as she said the word pop. Her gaze alone was enough to suggest she was beginning to devour him already. Robbie was undone now. A bird caught in a snare, an arrow piercing his liver, a net entangled his heart, one he was unable to escape. One, in fact, he did not wish to escape. Freedom was an ideal he desired no longer. He would do anything to secure this woman's affection and hold on to it for life. His focus was laser sharp now. The world of lust he breathed every day had finally found its ultimate object of desire. He took a step closer, his hips pressing against the counter now as he slid his fingers beneath hers and gripped the darts in his left hand. "You're damn straight I can pop them," he stated boldly to the girl. "That's my tiger," she said, and scratched the back of his hand before stepping back and out of the way. Joey noticed at that moment that Robbie also had the Red Lady Devil stamp on his left hand. His, too, seemed to be aglow. "Let me see what my man can do," the girl encouraged him. Robbie moved the first dart into his right hand and took a big step backward. He wasted little time in aiming. It was a natural act to him. He threw darts all the time, but tonight his body burned with an uncanny strength. He was precise, but whipped the dart with a power he'd never possessed before. His arms snapped forward like a pitcher slinging a fastball. The plastic feathers whizzed through the air. The dart skewered the first balloon, making it pop, despite it being underinflated, a typical carnival trick to make success more elusive. The girl squealed with pleasure. "What strong arms you have, Tiger!" she exclaimed. "Do it again. For me?" Her smile was intoxicating to Joey, and it wasn't even fixated on him. To Robbie, it was the source of an incredible high, a feeling of being desired intense beyond measure, beyond anything he'd ever dreamed of. She wanted him with all her being. He could tell, and it made him feel fulfilled and satisfied like nothing else he'd ever experienced. He threw the next 4 darts in rapid succession, busting a balloon with every one of them. The girl clapped and cheered and bounced up and down. Robbie beamed with pride at his accomplishment and with anticipation for his prize. "So beautiful," he asked. "What do I win?" She pointed to a sign up high and to the far right of the booth. Neither Joey or Robbie could remember seeing it there before, but Robbie didn't even care. It said, "First prize, escort for the night." "You get me, Tiger," she stated with a large smile, her whole body twitching with excitement. For a moment, her whole countenance changed, becoming stern. She turned and looked toward the back right corner of the booth, out of sight. "Peter!" she shouted. A young man with a large frame lumbered into view. "Pick up the darts and close the booth. I'm done for the night. Understood?" The man nodded his head with reverential respect and responded with an acute level of excitement. "Yes, my lady," before grabbing the darts one by one as instructed. The girl turned back to Robbie, eyes alight with the fire of young love, or at least young lust. Robbie was infatuated, but Joey somehow couldn't take his eyes off the man gathering darts. He went about his job with a fond fervor, glad to serve, whistling while he worked. As he plucked the last dart from the plywood backstop, Joey saw the Red Lady Devil stamp on the man's hand, except it didn't look like a stamp at all, more like a tattoo, but it glowed faintly. "My name is Ruby," the girl introduced herself. "I'm Robbie," he declared, as if he were no doubt a knight in shining armor come to her rescue. "Well, Robbie," Ruby said, slipping her arm in his and hugging her body snugly against his. Let's take a walk about the carnival, shall we? Robbie nodded vigorously and began walking, following her lead. Yes, m'lady, he said without thinking. Joey looked away from the man in the booth to see Robbie walking away with nary a word spoken to him. Robbie! Joey called out and began walking toward him and Ruby. Robbie didn't answer. Robbie? Joey called out, the confusion in his voice forming a question with his tone. Still no response from Robbie. He walked and laughed at whatever the girl, Ruby, was saying to him. What the hell, Robbie? He shouted. What's wrong with you? Ruby turned around then. Young man, be happy for your friend, because he is happy. Ruby's voice had changed. Before, she enunciated every word with a perfect, typical American accent, but now it was different. Eastern European or Russian, perhaps, Joey thought, based on TV shows he'd watched. Go now, she shooed him. Go back to Mia and you can be happy too. With that, she turned around and walked off with Robbie, neither of them ever looking back. Joey stood still, staring after them until they disappeared into the crowd, perplexed by what had transpired. It was beyond unusual. It was categorically bizarre. And how the fuck did she know my name? He thought. Fuck this, Joey said aloud, and moved over to the whack-a-mole booth. The girl there was just as beautiful as Ruby. Joey approached the counter, dollars in hand, but the girl leaned on the back wall, ignoring him. What the hell? What the fuck is wrong here? What's wrong with me? Joey could think of no reason why the girl should be completely ignoring him. He stared at the woman, frustration turning to anger. For fuck's sake, I'm a goddamn paying customer. Why won't she serve me? The girl's head snapped up in his direction, almost as if she heard his thoughts. I am not for you, she said, in the same accent as Ruby. Go. You go to Mia. She is for you. You are for her. Go now and you can be happy, like your friend. Joey stood there, dumbfounded, utterly confused by this development. The girl waited a few seconds before furrowing her brow and actively shooing him away with both hands. Joey took the hint and left. I guess I'll go see Mia again. On his way back to Mr. Top Hat and Mia, he passed more male workers, all joyfully performing their duties. Joey actively looked at the back of each one's left hand. The Red Devil Lady was on every one of their hands. With each additional one he observed, the hairs on Joey's arms and the back of his neck stood erect. A chill moved through his spine, and his stomach felt like it was hanging over a chasm. At last, he walked up to the platform where Mr. Top Hat and Mia stood. Her gaze embraced him this time. Intentional, primal, mystifying. With one look, she sprung the trap. Joey felt his will succumb to hers, felt every desire for sex, belonging, and being desired satisfied in that one look. The way one corner of her mouth turned up in happiness made his world shine brightly as the sun at noonday. Contentment filled his being. She was everything he wanted. Everything he could ever possibly long for. She was the great treasure at the end of an adventure. An all-encompassing peace to immunize his heart against worry or anxiety of any kind. She was home. She was the night. She was a universe full of stars, the alpha and omega of his happiness, the end of emptiness, the place where he would forever belong. Mr. Top Hat tipped his head, touching the brim with his left hand. Joey saw it, but didn't process it. The Red Devil Lady tattoo, all aglow. Mia descended the steps, 1 foot at a time in slow motion, her eyes never leaving Joey's. She read him like a book, his simple lusts laid bare before her natural instincts, the gift of her kind, discerning his fantasies and dreams while simultaneously enslaving his will, preparing to bind him to her. Joey was paralyzed, captivated with joy at the sight of Mia, at the thought of her desire for him, of how he would fulfill her every need, and her his. They were perfect for each other. Mia stood in front of him now, the fragrance of her perfume, the natural aroma of her silken skin. It was overwhelming to Joey. He was overcome with desire for Mia, his arousal clearly visible. Mia blushed as she slipped her fingers behind his head and through his hair. She leaned close and breathed exhilaration in his ear, a titillating promise of euphoria evermore that only her kind can keep. Her words whispered next, a succubi lullaby, filling his soul with hope. He shivered, a deliriously delightful high rushing through his every nerve fiber. Her voice, her breath, her touch. There was nothing else in the world to live for, to work for. She tugged against his head, and he bowed to her will. She kissed him, long and deep, her dark magic binding him to her, marking him as the object of her possession from henceforth. His hand burned and sizzled along the line of the Devil Lady stamp, making permanent what had been temporary. Joey didn't even feel the pain. There was no pain while in Mia's embrace. As Mia completed the kiss and began to pull away, a wisp of some smoke-like substance stretched between them for a moment, before Mia inhaled and sucked the mist inside her lungs. Joey gasped in pleasure and opened his eyes, his face a portrait of mindless satisfaction. "Come with me, my little bear, my first. You will always hold a special place in my heart. Let us go now and consummate our bond and sign the contract of your thraldom with your lusts fulfilled." Mia slipped her arm inside Joey's and began to lead him away. "Joey!" a female voice shouted from a distance. Joey didn't acknowledge it, didn't break stride. "Joey, what the hell, man? You were supposed to meet us outside a half-hour ago." It was his sister, Linda, but he didn't care. "Hey, Joey!" A different female voice. Jenny's. For a fraction of a second, there was a twinge at the remembrance of Jenny's body in their playful show and tell. But she was nothing compared to Mia. Mia completed him in every way. He would never betray her, never fail her, never leave or forsake her. Joey didn't even turn around to say goodbye to his sister or Jenny. He just squeezed Mia's arm and continued to follow her lead. "What the hell?" Linda sputtered to Jenny, completely confounded by Joey's actions. "And who the hell is that chick he's with?" "I have no idea," Jenny offered. "But don't let him get out of our sight. Come on!" Jenny took off at a trot, with Linda on her heels. They could see Joey for a bit, but couldn't seem to gain on him, despite the fact he never sped up. It was closing time now, and more people were headed for the front gate. Joey and the girl disappeared amongst the other park attendees, there one moment and gone the next. Linda and Jenny ran ahead, darting in between the crowd, scanning for Joey, but to no avail. They made their way toward the exit gate to search the parking lot. As they passed the ticket box shack, an old, heavy-set lady smoking a Salem cigarette called out to them. "Y'all have a good night, you hear?" Linda and Ginny didn't even spare the woman a glance, just ignored her. She grinned a big lopsided grin, cigarette still in her mouth. Her eyes glowed red in the moonlight, twinkling brightly for a moment, then fading back to normal. "Oh, yes, you both have a good night," she mumbled. "Mia take good care of your brother. He in good hands." The old lady took a deep puff off her cigarette, held it in, then blew out smoke into the night. 3 days later. Ginny and Linda were just finishing stapling up missing person posters with both Joey and Robbie's pictures on them. "Have you seen me?" in block letters across the top. Linda cried. Ginny hugged her in what she suspected was a hopeless sign of support. She didn't believe either boy would ever be found. 2 states away, the carnival had come to town. Joey and Robbie both were happier than they'd ever been in their lives. Robbie picked up darts for Ruby all day long, content just to remain in her presence. Joey helped set up the strongman game and carried the mallet out to the platform. During the day, he walked around the platform and out into the audience area, picking up trash. But his eyes always returned to Mia at every opportunity. His passion, his lust.